Okay. Then comes the fourth observation. That is no and minimal aggravation. In the book, it is written that no aggravation, but it is not the case always. You always notice some slight aggravation in every case. It might not be traceable to you or to the patient, but there is still some aggravation, which is so minimal, so less traceable that you cannot observe it, or the patient बोलेगा मुझे तो पता नहीं चला, बस दवाई खाया और मैं ठीक. बट स्टिल हम यही एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं मेडिसिन देने के बाद कि कुछ पेशेंट को थोड़ा दिक्कत पहले वो बोले कि कुछ बड़ा है, कुछ ऐसा थोड़ी दिक्कत बड़ी फिर एकदम कम हुई, तो वो हमारी बहुत फेवरेट ऑब्जर्वेशन है, बिकॉज उसमें हमें श्योर शॉट है नाउ द पेशेंट विल इंप्रूव. ये केस अब निकलेगा ही निकलेगा, अब इसको रोक नहीं सकता कोई. सो फोर्थ ऑब्जर्वेशन गोज बाय नो, और आई थिंक इसको और अच्छे से लिखना है तो मिनिमल जरूर हमें ऐड करना है इसमें, बिकॉज ये इसको और जस्टिफाई करता है इस ऑब्जर्वेशन को, बिकॉज देयर इज नो सच थिंग व्हिच इज आइडियल इन दिस वर्ल्ड. इट इज ए वेरी आइडियल ऑब्जर्वेशन. Observation number 4, very ideal observation, but nothing is ideal because we are already influenced by environmental factors, social factor, emotional factors. So we are not living in an ideal situation. That is why we could not get an ideal observation in every case. It is a very rare observation. Okay. So no or minimal aggravation with recovery of the patient. Now, why I'm saying that there is some minimal aggravation? Because according to aphorism 160, there Himanshu mentions that you cannot make a dose so small that it cannot excite, that it loses its power, that it cannot overpower a natural disease of an uncomplicated nature, of not too long standing. What does it mean? That a homeopathic dose can scarcely be made so small that it loses its power to overcome the natural disease. So you cannot make a dose so small that it loses its power, dynamic power, to overcome the natural disease, which should be an uncomplicated nature, and it should not be a very long standing in nature. So according to aphorism 26, if you want to totally annihilate this weaker dynamic affection, you need a similar but different in kind, a stronger manifestation, a strongest one, in order to totally extent, in order to totally annihilate this, the former one, the disease one. That is what aphorism 26 says. So if you give a dose to a patient, homeopathic dose, which is not a stronger one than the original, than the diseased one, then the patient will not be able to free from a sickness. So in order to remove those troublesome symptoms, in order to change the state of a patient from sick to health, you need a similar force, differing in kind, but stronger one than the former one, than the diseased one. When we get a stronger manifestation than the former one, the disease force is weaker in front of the medicinal force, and that is why medicinal force is able to annihilate the disease symptoms, the disease force in its whole extent. So if your medicinal force is equal to it or below to it, it will not able to annihilate it, the disease one. But if it is slightly higher, slightly strongest, then it is enough to make a cure. So every time you give some slightest higher force, higher manifestation, stronger manifestation, there should be definitely some excitation of symptoms for initial hours, for some initial couple of minutes or initial hours. That is why here, according to Aphorism 160 and 26, no aggravation is not practically possible. But if happens, then your interpretation is that there is very mild inflammation, no structural changes. Kant says that there is only involvement of nerves. So the disease are only restricted to the nervous system. There Kant writes nerves. It means that there are some functional changes. So the interpretation is that the inflammations are very mild. They're very mild cases of sickness with no structural changes, not at all. Prognosis is very good. Your medicine and potency selection according to this observation is very perfect, because if there is no aggravation with recovery of patient, then your medicine and potency selection is similar. It's perfect. Action, you need to wait. But why this observation is not even likable in clinics to physicians? Because you always remain in doubt that there were no slightest excitation or aggravation of symptoms. Patient has not told me even once that his current symptoms, his chief complaints were aggravated for at least some minutes, some hours, or some days. So you remain always in doubt. Why in doubt? That comes in next observation, where amelioration comes first and then the aggravation comes afterwards. What does it mean? That in fourth observation you see no aggravation, not at all. So when you learn of observation 5, you always remain in a doubt that this case might not follow the observation 5th. That am I not going to observe observation 5? And that is very pathetic. That is why it is very likable when I was telling the observation 3, that it is the favorite observation of our clinician, of the physicians. Because you always want to see some slight aggravation in the beginning of the case. Because from that you are very short in your cases that definitely if the aggravation was quick, short and strong, this case is going to improve and their rapid improvement follows. But in observation 5th, here also the amelioration comes first. In observation 4, there is no aggravation. Then what? There is amelioration now. If there is no aggravation, then only the room left is for amelioration. So here also the amelioration comes first. Patient tells you, I'm fine. After taking your dose, I'm doing good. I'm doing well. But for how long? What happens in this observation, that when you come across any case and you give some medicine, XYZ medicine to a patient, and the patient after the week comes to you to give his follow-up, and when you're making when you're taking his follow-up case, and there's he mentioned all the changes of the symptoms, all the scenario which happened in this week. There you find that patient is saying that right after the dose, I'm feeling very good. I'm feeling better. and you're very happy because your medicine works. You think that your medicine worked and you give him placebo. In the second week, patient again comes to you for the follow-up, but this time patient tells you that, doctor, the symptoms which were present before, the symptoms that I came with, the intensity of symptoms that I came with has actually bounced back, and the intensity have also increased. So you see कि पहले आराम आ रहा है, ameliorations comes first and then the aggravation comes afterward. It means कि पहले अगर 10 में से 10 दिक्कत थी और मेरे को 5 आराम मिला पहले हफ्ते, तो अब वो 10 की जगह अब मेरी 12 पहुंच गई है. उस लेवल से पेशेंट को अब एग्रेवेशन हो चुका है. सेम सिम्टम्स जो है सेम इंटेंसिटी से वापस नहीं आए. यहां पर द सेम इंटेंसिटी is not following here for his symptoms. The intensity is increased. That is why amelioration comes first and the aggravation comes afterward. It means that symptoms are not coming back in its original form. It came back in aggravated from before. Even before the patient came to you, his suffering was still less, but now his suffering is more than before. So amelioration came first. Amelioration comes first. Oh doctor, I am feeling very good. Yes, your medicine worked wonders, and you are feeling very proud. Oh yes, this is a miracle. The suffering of patient is 5 years long standing. And with a one dose, see, in 1 week, in the first week, his symptoms, his complaints reduced to 60%. But after the second week, he says that, doctor, I am even suffering now more than before. My symptoms are getting more worse than before, than ever. दर्द डॉक्टर और ज्यादा बढ़ गया. इतना तो पहले भी नहीं था जितना मैं लेके आया था आपके पास. So this is the case study. This is the explanation of this observation. But what is your interpretation? Interpretation is like this. Either your medicine is acting superficially. Either your medicine is acting superficially or partially. Now, how is that? Suppose you took the case, but you only consider the only chief complaints, not correlating with the peculiar modalities, time modalities, other concomitants, patient's general state, patient's past history, family history. You did not correlate all of these aspects. Rather, you focused only on the chief complaints of the patient and you prescribed on it. And you have selected a medicine which is partial in acting, which is very superficial in acting. So that medicine gave some relief, initial relief to the patient, but now the symptoms are getting more worse than before. So now this is an obstacle in this case because of the physician. This is the observation which could be due to physician mistakes. And what is another interpretation, another side of the coin, that this case could be incurable. If you took the case very correctly, if you analyze it very correctly, if you repertorize or you correlated the materia medica according to the need of the case, according to best of your knowledge, and in the follow-up, when you re-examine the case, you re-examine your anamnesis, you again come to the same medicine and you think that my selection of the medicine is not partial, not superficial, then another side of this interpretation, of this case, of this observation is that this case might be incurable. Okay. Prognosis unfavorable. You do not want such observation in your cases in your clinic. Medicine and potency selection is very wrong. Action: re-examine the symptoms and select a more similar medicine if the fault lies on the behalf of physician. If the case is incurable, same. Either you go for palliation or superficial acting medicines. You tell the patient that only this kind of method could be utilized in your case. Now, observation 6. It is also says that too short relief of symptoms. डॉक्टर थोड़ी दिनों के लिए तो सिम्टम में फर्क पड़ा, फिर सिम्टम बढ़ गए. So observation 5 और observation 6 में difference क्या हुआ? What is the difference between observation 5 and observation 6? If in both the symptoms are getting relieved for some duration. Because in observation 5 the amelioration comes first, but there follows the aggravation. And in observation 6 there is also too short relief of symptoms. It means the amelioration is staying for a short period. But there is a very marked difference. In observation 5, if you see this, amelioration comes first, then the aggravation comes afterwards. It means the symptoms are getting more worse than before. But in observation 6, the symptoms return with the same intensity, or intensity is not greater than before or below. Intensity is below from before, from the day one when the patient came to your clinic. So इसमें जो दिक्कत थोड़े दिनों के लिए आराम रह रहा है, बट ऐसा नहीं बढ़ रहा है कि पेशेंट जितना लेके आया था उससे ज्यादा बढ़ गया. मतलब सिम्टम्स यहाँ पे उससे ज्यादा नहीं बढ़ रहा है, लेकिन आराम थोड़े दिनों के लिए रह रहा है. फिर चाहे दिक्कत थोड़ी सी वापस आ जाती है या उतनी ही बन के वापस आ जाती है. So in here the symptoms are ameliorated for very short period. Too short relief of symptoms. Now किस में हो सकता है ऐसा? Now we come to the case study. For example, in acute inflammations in which there is very high grade of fever, where there is inflammation of meninges, where there is septicemia, where there is pymia, where there is greater pus formation, there you give some medicine. For example, you give XYZ medicine. Kent has given example of belladonna, aconite. This is very short acting medicines. When we call it in the aspect of acute cases, although every medicine could be utilized in acute or chronic cases, I'm not specifying any medicine that it is only a short acting medicine, it is only for acute disease or it is only for chronic disease. But according to Kent, which he in his book he mentioned about belladonna, that in acute viral fever of viral meningitis you give belladonna, but it only acts for a short period. Why? Because vital force always need continuous stimulation, because in that cases, in very acute flared up cases, where there is like I have mentioned, that septicemia, pymia, where there is pus formation, inflammation of meninges, the vital force continuously going to exhaust. The dose of your medicine is going to exhaust very soon. So the amelioration, the relief comes, but it lasts for very short durations. So you need to repeat the medicine very frequently in those acute cases. So interpretation, in this I am saying about only for acute disease, that the medicine of the action of medicine is exhausting. So you need to repeat it frequently in order to give the patient relief for a longer period, or in order to bring back the patient by going into any danger. and it can be followed by some antipsoric or some intercurrent medicines according to the case, or more deep acting medicine according to the totality of the case. But in chronic case, if you see this observation like too short relief of symptoms, then what is your interpretation? Now, there are also obstacles to recovery, but this obstacle of recovery, according to Kent, in this observation, too short relief of symptoms is not due to physician's fault. Like in observation 5, that there could be a physician fault. That amelioration is coming first, then aggravation is following back. Now, obstacles to recovery here in the observation 6, it is on the part of patient. What? For example, you give a patient a dose of Sarinum and you see that there is relief of the symptoms, but you have mentioned that patient that please do not drink coffee, but the patient does not listen to you, and he on daily basis drinks coffee, drinks too much of coffee. So if you go to Boric Materia Medica, then Boric writes in the relationship of Sarinum that Sarinum patient do not do well by use of coffee. So it means that Sarinum symptoms or Sarinum conditions might be aggravated if we use coffee in between the treatment after giving it the Sarinum. So the patient itself disturb the action of medicine, and hence we see that even after selecting the so deep acting medicine, very deep acting medicine, the sword, the relief is for very short period, too short relief of symptoms. डॉक्टर 1 week 2 week सिम्टम ठीक रहा, ऐसा लग रहा है दोबारा जैसे दिक्कत थोड़ा वापस आ रही है, अब वो आराम नहीं है जितना पहले था. You re-examine the case and again you find that Sarinum is coming. I have given the right medicine. You recheck your medicine. You recheck your rubrics. You recheck your source of materia medica. Sarinum is coming after all, and the patient is saying that if for initial days there is some improvement, he sees some improvement, but after a couple of weeks the symptoms are like coming back, or there is now not that much of amelioration, not that much of improvement which it was before. Then you ask patient about his lifestyle, about his diet and regimen, and there he mentioned that he was drinking a cup of coffee once morning, once at bedtime at night, and there you find a fault, there you find obstacle to recovery in that case. Now this is one example. You can take n number of examples. For example, if you give some patient ignitia, then also the coffee relation comes in between. Hence, if you give some medicine and you correlated it in your materia medica that this food article or this environmental stress should be avoided. Like if you give some patient a plant-based medicine, and you ask patients to not to use camphor in your religious activities, in your religious custom, and they do not listen to you. After the warning, still they are practicing that camphor puja in their religious custom, or they are smelling camphor, or they are burning Google or camphor in their houses for sanitization and whatever their logic are, or in their religious custom too. While doing some religious activity, you have advised them to please not to use them at least till your treatment follows, but they do not listen to you. And after coming in contact of that camphor fumes, your vegetable analog medicine is getting antidoted. Then also you see that symptoms are getting relief for a very short period. So if you go through all the obstacles of recovery that could be imagined on the part of the patient. Suppose you tell some patient to not to eat fried food, like he is suffering from a lot of gastritis and liver disorders, and he does not listen to you. He always try to eat outside. He does not like to eat. He does not like to eat homemade food, well cooked food, easily digestible food, and he eats golgappa, pani puri, and tikki and fast food, fried food a lot, non-veg food a lot. Then this is also an obstacle to recovery, that patient is not following your given diet and regimen. So this is some obstacles of recovery that lies on the part of patient. So this comes as a hindrance in the action of your medicine, that the improvement is not so long lasting which you have thought of. That even after selecting some deep acting medicine, even after selecting a very correct medicine in a very correct potency for the patient, even after repeating it, same trend follows, that symptoms are getting relieved for very too short period. So you question your patient, are you doing something out of my advice? Are you not following my advice? कुछ अपने से उल्टा सीधा तो नहीं कर रहे, ये जो बोला था ऐसे तो नहीं कर रहे. If you find it, please correct it at that point. Then you will not see this observation. In the next, when you repeat the medicine, or if the patient stop doing this hindrance, this obstacle on his part, again you see that the action of medicine is again going to follow in a favorable direction. Or if there is no obstacle to recovery, if you have not figured out anything, if you have not found anything faulty on the part of patient, then again the second interpretation could be this case is also an incurable one. The prognosis is unfavorable. Obviously, you will not favor such kind of observation, that after some initial or relief for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at the end of the month, the patient says that now the improvement is not that much which it was before. Medicine potency selection is right if the case is not incurable, and there is lies the fault on the part of patient. If the case is not incurable, if the case is incurable, your medicine is right, your potency is right, but you can only do something on the part of yours as a physician, mere palliation. Action, look for obstacles and remove them. Now observation 7, what it says, that full-time ambulation of the patient, yet no special relief. Now what is it? Like full-time ambulation of the symptoms, yet no special relief of the patient. So the case study goes with some interpretation, that in where we can find this kind of observation. Like in the cases where you find that the patient is coming to you after very prolonged drugging history, allopathic drugging, Ayurvedic drugging, Unani drugging, or even homeopathic. So the side effects of previous treatment, either surgical like after removal of gallbladder, cholecystectomy, hysterectomy, after some major heart operations, open bypass surgeries, after some conventional treatment of long standing, especially allopathic treatments, which creates a artificial chronic disease. If you refer aphorism 77, it is a most difficult one to cure, because it renders patient incurable in many cases, because that artificial drugging, that prolonged drugging, causes some severe turmoil in the vitality and causes some deep structural changes in the body that it cannot be reversed back. So in these cases, you see that there are amelioration of the symptoms for full time, but yet patient does not feel that special relief. कि मजा नहीं आ रहा. Because if there is open heart surgery, then the patient has some symptoms of breathlessness till their life. You cannot claim that I can make you a non-hypertensive patient, because you cannot do that, because he was on a anti-hypertensive medicines for a very long period. So they see that it is a side effect of that previous prolonged treatment, that it caused a diseased state, artificial disease. It has created an artificial disease that cannot be removed now homeopathically with your medicines. So after some surgical procedures where some organ is compromised and it has to be removed from the body, if there is transplantation of an organ, if there is absence of that vital organ, if there is congenital abnormality, if that part which is required is absent right from the birth, there is also the patient will face some symptoms due to lack, due to deficiency of it. If you remove the gallbladder from a person, from a patient, he is very liable to face hyperacidity and gastritis of symptoms. It is very common for them, and you cannot make it patient to avoid these kind of troubling symptoms every time. If there is hysterectomy, ovarectomy, then also female suffers from reflex symptoms of hormonal abnormality. Now, it is not due to the fault of your medicine that the patient is not feeling that much relief. The fault lies on the part of prolonged intake of such treatments, or congenital abnormality, or absence of that organ or the part that is needed for the proper function, for the proper physiology of the body, or any side effects of surgical or conventional treatments like I have mentioned, or in any advanced pathology like in aphorism, like in observation 1 which we have discussed. So in many advanced pathology, like I have told, like if there is stents in the heart, stent implantation in the heart, bypass surgeries, then there is pathologies very advanced, cardiomechanics, left ventricular hypertrophy. There the patient, you give them medicine, but there are structural changes which is now irreversible, permanent. There is also the patient is coming to you with a lot of symptoms, complexity of symptoms, and he is improving, but yet he says that, oh doctor, there is till now there is some breathlessness and my hypertension is not getting very much controlled and I am feeling not very. You cannot make him feel better because there is a tempered state, alteration is already done, that he is actually tempered by the surgical procedures, his organs is tempered. So you cannot claim or you cannot give him back his natural state, because now he is surviving just because of that artificial implantations, artificial supports. If there is very marked degeneration in the knees, there is depletion of fluid, there is very reduction of the space in between the joints, like femur and tibia. When you see there is marked formation of osteophytes, so there is advanced pathology in that knee joint. There also you give Rustox, you give Bryonia or any constitutional medicine, or even there also the patient still face the pain. You can only temporarily alleviate it. The patient is not at all free from his pain forever. You also need to ask him to do some physiotherapy or exercises in order to move the joint, in order to circulate the blood properly in it, for some more amelioration. But where there is advanced pathology, like I have given examples, side effects of previous treatments which created an artificial chronic diseases due to surgical or conventional methods, or there is congenital abnormality or absence of that organ, due to which the physiology is imbalanced. There also some persisting symptoms, some troubling symptoms will remain with the patient till his life, till her life, and you cannot give that special relief to the patient, but you can full-time ameliorate his other sufferings. So, prognosis unfavorable, medicine potency selection. Kent has advised that keep your keep your potency low, 30 or 200 maximum, and repeat very judiciously, not very frequently. Action, look for palliation. Okay, now observation 8. Some patients prove every medicine they get. Now, from these observations, observation number 8, we tend to study the action of medicine. Now we study the action of medicine. Some patients prove every medicine they get. Explanation, for example, there are many patients who are very sensitive, who are very susceptible to any change. So in those patients, if you come across in life, there you give some medicine like Rustox for his coryza, and that patient has came to you for the very first time, and you did not know this. You did not know this hypersensitivity of that patient for your medicines. So you take his case, give him, for example, Rustox for his acute coryza, and after 2-3 days, the patient says that his coryza is getting better, but doctor, look, I am getting some red rashes. ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे किसी मच्छर ने जैसे काट लिया हो, ऐसा कुछ ऐसा लाल लाल ऐसे उभर के आ रहा है, और बहुत मेरे को खुजली इसमें हो रही है. Okay, now more. You ask some more symptoms and you find that I have given him Rustox, and patient is telling me the exact symptomatology of rust toxicodendron. So there you correlate and ask the patient, if you ever had these symptoms in your past life. The patient denies it. So after getting this short information, you try to antidote the rest talks by giving some X medicine. But after antidoting rust talks, that urticarial kind of eruption subsides. But now the patient is telling you the symptoms of that X medicine which you have given in order to antidote the effects of rust talks. So for example, then you told the patient that okay, go and snuff some coffee beans, snuff some camphor, and you will be all right, and the patient is all right. Then the patient comes to you for some another trouble, and you give him another medicine. Then also he started proving it. So you find that every medicine you give him, he starts to prove it. So what is the interpretation? That patient is very sensitive to medicine. If it persists, the case will not improve at all, and this situation you will face mostly in the chronic cases, because आप सिर्फ इसी चीज से जूझते रह जाओगे कि मैं उसकी इस हाइपर सेंसिटिविटी को कैसे कंट्रोल करूं. You will trap only in this turmoil, in this complex group of symptoms, which is the symptoms of proving. So prognosis, that is not good. Action, लेकिन करें क्या? अब ऐसा पेशेंट आ गया है, दवाई तो देना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो उसका ट्रस्ट ही खत्म हो जाएगा होम्योपैथी से. वो कहता है यहाँ जाता हूं तो मुझे तो उनका नुकसान हो जाता है, कुछ लेके कुछ जाता हूं, आ कुछ जाता है. So what we can try, give medicines in very lower attenuations, but remind, do not give very crude or very low, like mother tinctures or 1x, 2x, 3x, 6x, because that is also very could be harmful to the patient, because he can going to prove that crude substance too. So try to give the medicines in very low attenuation, like 12, 30, and very minimum dose. If you give 3-4 globules to him, just try to give 1 globule to him. Or if this does not work, try using some different pharmaconomical methods. Pharmaconomical method means pharmaconomy is nothing but different modes or methods of administration of medicine. So you can ask him to just olfact the medicine, the given medicine. Just close your one nostril, sniff the medicine from this side, then close this nostril, sniff the medicine from this side, and repeat it again. So while giving the medicine via olfaction or skin rubbing, you for some extent clears the chances of getting so much hypersensitive reaction in the patient, so that suffering जो उसकी है वो तो थोड़ा एमनेरेट होगा, लेकिन इस मेथड से डोज देने का जो तरीका है उसकी इंटेंसिटी इतनी कम होगी कि पेशेंट की वो सेंसिटिविटी लेवल तक नहीं पहुंच पाएगी जहां से वो एक्साइट हो जाता है. ओके, सो दिस मेथड्स यू कैन ट्राई. नाउ action of the medicine upon prover. This is observation 9, and this is nothing but only drug proving. So what we learn in drug proving in aphorisms, we apply those same concepts here. Observation 9 is nothing but study, like in observation 8, I have told you that in this observation 8 and 9, we will study the action of the medicine. There the patient proves every medicine. Here we study the action of medicine upon provers. It means nothing but drug proving.